what's going on YouTube? So I haven't been making YouTube videos lately because mostly I've been away traveling for like the last couple weeks or so. That was the last time I made one. But judging by the title of this video, I'm sure you guys can guess what this is about. So I'm not gonna say his name, so we're just gonna say Dave as a reference. So we met junior year, pretty much that's when I first saw him. So I guess that's when it all started. We weren't really close then, but as I got into my senior year of high school, that's when I started to talk to him more and he started to talk to me more, and that's when everything started between us. It took me a while to drop him because I considered him my best friend at the time, but as we got closer and I got to know him better, I'd say that I realized it wasn't meant to be between us, and if I wanted to be myself again, I had to drop him, and I eventually did it, and I am so happy that I went along with that in the long run. Let me say that when it comes to working and going to school with me, those were two completely different things in the past that I did not want to be associated with each other. I could go to school to get away from work, and I could go to work to get away from school. And if I had people in both, then that really annoyed me at the time, I guess. So I always tried my best to make sure that never happened, whatever means necessary. But senior year of high school, he came up to me and he was like, hey, can you help me get a job at Regal? And I was like, oh, well, I don't know if we're hiring, but, I could definitely try. And that's how, I don't know if we were or not. It was well over a year ago, so I don't remember that. But moral of the story, the first time he asked me, it never happened. And I was glad it didn't. Because, given that everything that happened between us, it all started because we were working together. Had that not happened, everything could have been completely different. So yeah, September 2019, he asked me for a job, and it basically never happened, so I was happy. And then time moved on, we were talking, and then he got on this car accident, and he totaled his car. And at that point, everyone was making fun of him, everyone was laughing at him, giving him a bunch of crap, and I felt bad for him. I took sympathy on that. So a single act of compassion on my part basically transformed my life. And that is something that should not have happened. From that moment on, the actions that I took created a new sequence of events that should not have happened. For me, at least. So he got in a car accident and he needed money to buy a new car. So I was like, okay, well, I felt bad for him, so I helped him get a job, and eventually he got it. So Thanksgiving time, and we start working together, and it's fine, it's all fun and games, he's still new and learning how to do everything. But, eventually, as most people so often do, he gets more comfortable, and then it starts to become a problem, because I guess problem isn't really the best word to use for that. I'd say it became a bigger situation from that point on. So yeah, we're working together at this point, and I don't really know much about him, but eventually I start to, and become better friends because we're working together, which was a good thing and a bad thing. We're spending more time with each other, and we're coming at each other's throats. So, when you see someone that you work with 8 hours for 3 days a week, and then you go see them another hour 5 days a week at school, then you see them every day, and you get annoyed of each other. I feel that's what happened between us. So Dave and I start having complications that way. We start working together, and now we're a couple of weeks in, and it gets to be Christmas time. So the busiest time of the year for us. For me, the idea of having a job was important to me. And because of that, I was able to buy my car, which I'm so grateful for to have. And when I told him what I was doing, he was super proud of me, which I was oh, well, awesome. Thanks for saying that. I really appreciate it. And he tried to do the same thing. So, we got two people working really hard to try to accomplish something that's basically impossible. So it's Christmas time, about to go into New Year's. And it's right around that time we start to have fights with each other. And me, I actually cared about this guy. Like, he was my friend. I enjoyed hanging out with him. I enjoyed talking to him. I enjoyed being with him. And, like, for whatever reason, he would use every little thing to his advantage and against me to start an argument. I was like, well, what the hell? Like, what's the point of doing that? Like, the fights were never, like, serious or in any way, like, violent, of course. They were just, like, arguments between each other, which I never wanted to have. Like, I never wanted to argue with someone. Like, my friends and I, on average, like, we have our issues from time to time, but that's only, like, once a year at best, and then we're over it, like, in a week. But, like, this guy will have fights with you for no reason. So yeah, he would start fights with me for no reason, and then he kept on doing this. Like, it never stopped. It got to the point where it was like every 2 weeks at best, he would start another one. I'd say just about everything I did seemed to piss him off, so there was no way to make him happy. So I learned from my mistakes, and I tried to better myself, and he used that against me. It was like, why are you changing who you are to be my friend? Like, I don't like that. But it was like, if you want to be my friend, you hate the way I am now, so obviously this isn't going to work between us. You know, over time, we're getting to like February or so, and people at school and work are seeing the way that he treats me, and they're like, Matt, how can you stay friends with this guy? Look at the way he's treating you like crap, and how can you stay with him? And, you know, like, it was around the time when people started talking to me about it that, like, I started to realize that he was toxic and fake as hell. But I always told them they were wrong. Like, you know that feeling where you just have to trust, like, your gut, pretty much? My gut told me that deep down he wanted to stay friends, but not enough. Like, I wanted to be friends for a long time, and eventually, like, pretty much right away, he gave up. So when it's just you trying to make a friendship work, it can't last much longer. But anyway, people were telling me, like, hey, how can you stay friends with this guy? Like, look at how he's treating you. He's literally an asshole. And I was like, yeah, you're right. But I mean, you know, he's my friend at the time. So, you know, you got to stand by him and, you know, stand up for him. Because that's what friends do for each other. Even though damn near every time he would not stand up for me. Like, he would pretty much gang up against me whenever possible. Like, if his friends started to talk shit about me, like, he would probably start doing it too. And then eventually, he claimed that he would stand up for me, but I don't know if I believe that. Like, people don't change unless they want to change. And I don't believe this guy wanted to change who he was at all. Certainly not for me. So, quick recap. Dave would start fights with me for no reason, whenever possible, and it got to be the point where every 2 weeks or so, he started to do it. And it never ended. Like, he kept doing it again and again and again. And then the funniest part of the story was how every time he would start a fight, I would end up apologizing because he told me it was something I did. Like, I wanted to make sure I did nothing wrong. So I always tried to apologize, even though most of the time he never did. And it was his fault for starting it. The way I saw it, at least. But, like, he would start a fight, I would end up apologizing for it. And then around February or so, that's when he started to, like, get more aggressive with it. Like, he would start blocking me and unfriending me on social media, like Snapchat and Instagram and all that. And I was just like, what the hell? Like, what's the point of that? And then some couple days later, every time he came back. And then I still apologized, but he never did. So that was ridiculous. And then over time, because, you know, he kept doing this, I started to see a pattern. And towards, like, May or so, that's when I had to end it. So I eventually did it. It took me a while, but, you know, I'm so glad I did in the long run. Like, between us, I did everything I could to make the friendship work. Like, I always complimented him, supported him, and respected his decisions, and gave him so much free shit. Like, I always paid for food, like, whenever we went out to hang out. Eventually, he started asking me for more stuff. And then, at that point, I knew he was toxic, but I still thought that he was my friend. So I wanted to do the right thing and, like, help him out like a good friend would, you know? But even though I knew he would never do this for me, I knew the whole time. Like, this was a one-way thing, and it would not be alone. It would be me giving him free shit. it would basically be me giving him my stuff for free with no chance of me getting it back at all. And I was fine with that because I was like, it's a friendly act of compassion and you're doing the right thing. So I was okay with it. Apparently that wasn't enough. So like I would give him a bunch of stuff and then that wouldn't be enough for him. He was like, oh, like you did that before and now you're not doing it now. Like what's up with that? Like I can't believe you would say that and not do it. Basically enough was never enough with him. So it would always be more things on top of other stuff that kept going. And I tried to draw the line. I was like, okay, now you're becoming too dependent on me and I want you to be independent and like learn responsibility, all that stuff that makes you a good person. And he was like, no, like that's ridiculous. Like you said you would do this, you said you would always be there for me. So I don't have to do that. When you could fall back on something forever, it's pretty nice. You need to eventually become self-sustaining for yourself and not rely on other people. So even though I did all these nice things, like I always paid for shit, I always supported him, everything that makes a good friend a real friend, he never did for me. And there was this time where he came up to me personally and he asked, hey Matt, like I'm really struggling here, like can you help me out with something? I was like, oh yeah, sure, what's up? And then, like, well, I really need new tires for my car. And I was like, okay, well, I get that. Like, you need tires to, drive a car. And, be safe out there, you need good ones. So I was like, okay, well, I can help you out with that. Like, that's no problem. Like, it's coronavirus and the 600 a week hit well for me. So I decided to spread my good fortune around to help out a friend again. And, I helped him pay for his tires. And I have to pay for new rims, which I never should have done. Like, if you want to mod your car, that should be on you and not on me. I didn't realize that at the time, so that was a mistake on my part. So he asked me for something and then kept on asking for more and more and more because of that thing. And then I eventually kept giving it to him. And then I tried to draw the line. I was like, okay, do you really need like this much for that one thing? And he was like, oh yeah, I definitely do. And I would have believed that, except the weird thing was it was a higher amount every day for like 3 days or so. So like the first day it was like $100, the next day it was $200, and like the next day it was $300. So I eventually ended up giving him like $600 in cash just to have like new tires and rims, which I did not have to do. I wanted to do because that's what a good friend would do. And I knew he would never do that for me. Even if the situation was reversed, he wouldn't. But I still did it anyway. So another quick recap. So basically, he started fights with me for no reason every 2 weeks. And eventually he started asking me for stuff. And in the interest of being a good friend, I did it for him. And I knew I would not get the same like courtesy. Like he would not do the things I did for him back for me, even if our situation was reversed. And never asked for anything in return, but he still started fights with me for no reason, and he was honestly not a good friend. He never changed his ways, basically. He was still toxic and fake. So we had this relationship where I would do so much nice things for him, and instead of him being grateful, he never changed. Like, he still went off and used every excuse he could to start a fight with me, to try to break our friendship. And then eventually he just came back, like every time. Like 4 days later, he added me back on Snapchat, and he expected me to act like nothing ever happened between us and just move on. And I would have been okay with that had he not kept doing it, to the point where I saw a pattern knowing that he was never going to change. I was doing everything I possibly could to be a good friend, and he still treated me poorly. He never gave me respect. He never changed his attitude. In retrospect, I guess he thought that I messed up and that this was all my fault. Even though from my perspective, he started it all. And I just did my best to defend myself because, like, I'm not going to let you say bad things about me and then let you get away with it. Like, you can't do that. Like that doesn't happen. But he thought it did. And because of that, he never changed his attitude. And so I was basically just left losing every fight because he always thought he was right and wasn't even willing to listen to me or hear me out. It's just not fair to me to give everything I have to make this friendship between us work when you clearly don't care if it works or not, as long as you get your way. If he gets his way, he's happy, and whatever happens to me is not important to him, I guess. So like, what kind of friend takes their interest ahead of the greater good? And thankfully this whole pandemic happened, so I never really had to see him in person so much, which was definitely a good space between us. And it helped me realize that he was toxic and I had to move on from him. And it took me a while because I wasn't ready to say goodbye, but eventually I was. And because of that, I'm a better person now, and I learned a lot from this whole experience. So I know what mistakes I made, what mistakes he made, and what happened between us so that it will never happen again. But in general, if you're trying to make a friendship work between someone that doesn't want it to work out or doesn't give in their best effort, and it's not going to last very long. And I was heartbroken when I realized that this wasn't going to work out between us, because I cared about him a lot and he was my friend. But if he was my friend, he wouldn't be starting fights with me for no reason. He wouldn't be taking advantage of my generosity. He wouldn't be using everything I did to try to walk away from our friendship and start arguments. I don't know any other person that would do that, because all my other friendships with everyone else are completely stable. We never have fights. Even if we have disagreements, we work them out right away and we're over with in 5 minutes and we pretend nothing ever happened. That's fine. But with him, he goes off me, he starts talking so much crap and says a bunch of mean things that actually hurt my feelings, and then it comes back a couple days later and expects me to just forgive him and forget about all that happened. I'm just beaten and weak, and I'm just gonna let him get away with that. And we got in so many fights where I eventually, that became natural. That became a thing for me to just let him get away with it. But what kind of friendship would that be if they talk crap about you and you let them do that? That's just completely unhealthy and super toxic. If this video can teach you anything, it's that please stay away from toxic people who do not give you respect and do not treat you well and say so many mean things that actually put you down. That is not healthy, and you're better off without them. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate all the views I've been getting, and it's going well. I really enjoy making the video, so I'm definitely gonna try to make some more. So just stay tuned and hang out for the next one.